So now we've got multiple fields. We've got them nicely separated. We've got them styled a little differently. I don't love the cornflower blue. It was just to show that we can style them differently. But we've got most of this happening in one kind of long, I can't even fit the whole thing at this font size on my screen. That is too long for one function. It has too many responsibilities. It's going to be too hard to troubleshoot if something goes wrong because I don't even know which part to look for. So it's just too much. This does a lot more than just handle submit. It builds a bunch of things from scratch. I say we separate it into multiple functions. So those of you who did, what functions did you make?
I made a function to build list items and then one to build span it.
Okay, one to build the list, one to build the span, that kind of stuff. So every time we're trying to build a new kind of thing, let's do that. Okay, let's start with building the spans. Sure. Let's call it, and we're using const here, so we better put it above where we're going to actually use it. Let's call it renderProperty. So spell name, spell level, those are properties of the spell. Render as in actually build the list, build the HTML elements for those things. They're spans now. If at some point we want to change them to something else, it'd be nice not to have to rename the method. We already had that trouble once. So renderProperty, I think, is pretty good. And in case it isn't clear, I'm trying to make one method that does both. Is that what you did, or did you make like two different?
Well, I made two because it's
Yeah.
split it up into like functions. I was originally going to make
Yeah.
one, but I'm just going to stick it as
Well, if you can make one that you call twice,
right.
then that's great. You've got an extra method, but it's being reused, or a function, but it's being reused. That's cool. Let's see if we can do that. So const renderProperty equals function. So I want this thing to spit out a span. What information does it need? Yeah. Go ahead.
Can you explain the difference again when like you make like render property a variable and then you do the function opposed to just saying like what's the difference?
So the difference in the way they actually behave, when you just use a function declaration, you can you can use it before you've actually defined it. So I could actually move that function definition to the end. It wouldn't have to be before handle submit. So this is ultimately going to get called from inside handle submit, right? So I need to put it higher in the code when I do it this way. I wouldn't if I did it the other way. So for right now, that's the difference. There are some other differences that aren't relevant to it yet. And it's those other differences that are really the reason we're doing this. But we'll run into some problems eventually to which this is the easiest solution. But that's, yeah, mostly it's just a syntax thing. Okay, so right now let's just copy one of these up there. So if I want to use the same function for both name and level, what do I need to change? Well, let's just I'll rename this span. Or if we wanted to, EL for element. That's, again, a pretty common short variable names. You don't want to get carried away with super short variable names. It's good if people can actually read your code and tell what it's supposed to be. But for certain things like event, abbreviating that event, everybody does that. Abbreviating error, just E. Abbreviating element, EL. That's fine. It's a 3-line function. I don't think we're going to lose track. So I'll just rename that to EL so that it's more general purpose. And it doesn't matter that it's a span particularly. So this is the one specifically for spell name. What would we have to change to make it general purpose? Basically, I'm trying to figure out what arguments should this have. What does it need to know in order for this same function to do both spell name and level?
You could like give an argument for text and then replace that with spell name.
Okay, so the text, right? This is going to be different. So basically, what's going to be different when this is level? This is going to be different. What else is going to be different?
I gave an argument third parent node and child node.
Okay. Okay, you could do that, but that's not... Okay, so in the version I'm doing, at least right now, I'm not doing that part here. I'm just building the span. I'm not yet doing the appending. Come on. Which part of this has to do with the spell name besides this? Where else does the word spell name appear? Come on, guys, answer the questions. I know you know the answer. This, right? So the class I'm going to add is different too. So I need to know two things. I need to know what value goes in the text content, and I need to know which class to add, right? So basically, this is the name of the field, and this is the value of the field, right? So we could just do it like that. Name, value, which kind of goes nicely with property. So it's the property name and the property value. So then which one do we use which place? Which one do I use on line 5? Value, right? And here would be the name. Now, right now, what this does is create a span and do nothing with it. Don't forget we need to actually return the span that we build, right? Right now, this doesn't do anything, so let's make sure that we return the element at the end of this. Now, I want to test this function on its own, not worrying about how it interacts with everything else, so I could go ahead and refresh the page and try to call it and see if I get what I expect. So render property, I can say spell name, magic missile, and I get back a spell with the class of spell name and text content of magic missile. Exactly what I wanted. But I've written this in such a way that it's very generic. It's very general purpose. I could do render property, snack. What you got there, Emily? Cheerios? Yeah. Span, classical snack, value, Cheerios. Cool. Nothing too fancy. I like it. So let's try to use it. So it seems like these 3 lines could be replaced with 1. So name span, instead of equally those 3 lines, I could say name span is render property. The field is spell name. The value is spell name, the value out of the form. Does it work? Still works. Do the same thing with the level span. Render property. Level. Level. Does it work? Works. Good. So we've broken that out into a separate function, and now this is shorter. You could, if you wanted to, just do something like this. Say item append child and just put render property right in there. No reason you couldn't, right? Makes it a little harder to track, a little harder to read, so maybe we don't want to do that, but you could do it. Sometimes doing things in the fewest lines possible isn't always the clearest way to read later, but we could do that. So building the list item itself, we had someone suggested that we make a separate function for that. So all these things. So to do that, let's see. We could do const render item. It's a list item. Let's see what we can do. We're going to be making this list item. We're going to need to return it at the end. Don't forget that part. So it has a class. We're only calling this once though. And it needs to append two different things. So, maybe, how'd you like to do this? I got some big ideas. Let's come back to this. I think I haven't committed since I did all that. So I think that is worth committing. So extract render property function. So what we've done now is a refactoring. Who knows the term refactor? Yeah, restructure your code without actually changing its behavior. Right? We're not doing anything differently than we were before. It's just now we have multiple functions doing the same thing. Let me make sure I didn't leave this in a broken state. Okay, no, seems fine. Good. So extract render property function. And what we've just done is refactoring. Didn't actually change the behavior of our app. We just changed the code. Changed the code without changing the behavior.